the enchanted frogman of Beverly Hills. The sun began to set over the sprawling estate of the Beverly Hillbillies, casting long and golden shadows across the manicured lawns that seemed so out of place for a family from the mountains. Inside the mansion, the air was thick with the scent of pine and a hint of something mysterious brewing in the kitchen. Jed Clampett stood by the window, his weathered face etched with a calm patience that only a man of his years could possess. He watched the driveway, waiting for the sound of a returning car. Granny burst into the room, her tiny frame vibrating with an energy that could power a small city. She was pacing the floor, her hands wringing her apron. She looked at Jed and exclaimed that she wanted to see if Ellie was home yet. Jed, without turning from the window, told her that he had told her before to stop worrying about Ellie. But Granny was not to be silenced so easily. She reminded Jed that his only daughter was out with a sailor. Jed nodded slowly and said he knew that. Granny raised her voice a notch, adding that he was not only a sailor, but he was a frogman. Jed sighed softly and said he knew that too. He gently suggested that she go on to bed because Ellie could take care of herself. Meanwhile, outside the grand entrance, a young man named Mark was walking Ellie Mae to the door. Ellie smiled at him, her eyes bright with genuine affection. She told Mark that she sure did thank him for a wonderful evening. Mark, reluctant to leave, asked if they could just sit there and talk for a while. Ellie glanced up at the darkened windows and noted that she saw the light on in Granny's room. She reckoned that the old woman was waiting up for her. Mark looked a bit sheepish. He confessed his wish that Granny would stop worrying about him being a frogman. It really seemed to upset her, he noted. Ellie nodded in agreement. She reckoned Granny figured it was kind of dangerous, being underwater so much. Mark laughed softly and assured her it was not all that dangerous. He described it as a fascinating new frontier to the unexplored depths of the ocean and expressed his hope to show it to her soon. Ellie's face lit up, saying she would love to see it. Then, with a mischievous glint in her eye, she asked if Mark supposed she could get Granny down there. Mark chuckled and said he doubted it, as she was awful scared of water. Inside, Granny was not sleeping. She was huddled in the parlor, staring intently at the television set. She let out a sudden yelp, shouting that he had her in the parlor and calling out for the fiend to quit loose on her granddaughter. Jed came into the room, telling her to be quiet. He asked what was going on in there. Granny, eyes glued to the screen, explained that she was watching the late monster movie. She asked if he had ever seen the creature from the slimy ooze. She was convinced that Cousin Ellie was out with it. On the screen, a rubbery monster was terrorizing a city. Granny pointed at the television, claiming that the rascal just grabbed a beautiful blonde girl. She narrated the plot with frantic intensity, saying that now the creature did not know whether to take her to his world at the bottom of the swamp or to live in her world on a Park Avenue penthouse. She shouted for a general, then cheered as the monster dragged the girl down into the slimy ooze. She called the monster a dandy. Jed shook his head in disbelief, muttering about what a family they were and how they were all hooked on freaks. Granny announced that was the end of that one, and that now came the late monster movie titled The Lizard That Ate Philadelphia. She called out for the general again, confessing she was half worried out of her mind and had to have somebody to talk to. She reminded anyone listening that Cousin Ellie was out with a naval frogman, and in her mind, from the navel down, he was a frog. She suddenly pointed at the screen again, shouting for them to look at the vampire Batman, the green zombie, the werewolf, and the mad scientist. She claimed they were all good guys. Ellie finally walked in and Granny pounced. She asked where the frogman was and if he had tried to take her to his swamp. Ellie sighed and said of course not. Granny told her to run quick to the kitchen, cut a potato in two, rub herself good with it, and then bury it. When Ellie asked what for, Granny explained it was so she would not get warts. Jed intervened, telling Granny to leave the girl alone and go to bed. Granny asked if he wanted her to get warts. Jed replied that he wanted her to get some sleep, and Granny too. He asked Ellie if she had a nice evening, and she replied that it was fine dandy and that she and Mark were going on a picnic tomorrow. The next morning, the house was a whirlwind of activity. Granny was gone early, heading straight for the bank. She burst into the office of Miss Jane Hathaway, declaring that she had to talk to somebody who was smart. She told Miss Jane that she was the smartest person she knew. Miss Jane, always professional, said that was very flattering, though she admitted she did not look too intelligent with her raincoat and umbrella. Granny mentioned she thought it was going to rain, but Jane corrected her, saying it was going to be nice and that the young couple would get to have their picnic. Jane asked Granny what she thought of Mr. Templeton. Granny retorted with a question of what Jane thought of him. Jane remarked that he seemed like a fine, eligible young man and good-looking too. Granny asked if Jane had ever been swimming with him. When Jane said no, Granny told her that what she did not know would not keep her awake. She confessed to having bad dreams where Ellie married a frog. Jane tried to explain the concept of an aquatic centaur or a satyr, mentioning Greek mythology and figures like Pan and Zeus. Granny was fascinated. She asked if Jane could get that Zeus on the telephone, thinking he sounded like a good doctor. When Jane explained he was an ancient deity from Mount Olympus and did not make house calls, Granny was disappointed. She decided that since those old-time mountain doctors were the best, she would take matters into her own hands. She declared she would cure the frogman herself by making a potion. Back at the mansion, the kitchen was in chaos. Ellie was trying to prepare the picnic lunch. Jed walked in and asked what she was doing. Ellie explained she was fixing victuals for her and Mark. Jed suggested she let Granny fix it, but Ellie wanted Mark to taste her cooking. She proudly showed him her invention, garlic donuts, because she did not know how to make garlic bread. She also had a pot of spaghetti and meatballs. Jed tasted it and, in a heroic effort to be supportive, told her it was outstanding. He then secretly plotted to get rid of the food before it could do any damage. He sent Jethro to Big Mama Nacarelli's to get a real Italian meal. Meanwhile, Granny was in the kitchen brewing a glowing green liquid, reciting rhymes about eye of a newt and hair of a dog to cure the part of Mark that was frog. When Mark arrived, Granny cornered him and insisted he drink the potion. Mark, confused but wanting to stay on Granny's good side, drank the bitter liquid. He immediately felt a tingle in his feet and legs. Due to a series of misunderstandings and a stray frog that Granny found in the garden, she became convinced her potion had worked too well and turned Mark entirely into a frog. She spent the afternoon fretfully tending to the small amphibian, even giving it a red tonic to make it look less peaked. Eventually, Miss Jane visited again, and Granny asked her how to turn a frog back into a man. Jane mentioned the classic story of a maiden kissing a frog to turn him into a prince. Granny rushed to Ellie and begged her to kiss the frog she had in a cage. Ellie, though baffled, agreed to do it if it meant she would see Mark again. Just as Ellie leaned in to kiss the frog, Mark walked through the door. Granny, seeing Mark standing there healthy and human, was overjoyed. She shouted that it worked and that she was touched by an angel. The family gathered together. The confusion of the frogman finally settled. It was a day of strange potions and garlic donuts, but in the end, love and a little bit of mountain magic had carried the day. They all looked forward to a peaceful evening, perhaps one without any monster movies or swamp creatures, as the sun set once more over the hills of Beverly.